side. It was like the roar of a tornado jet coming through the woods. Incredible sound. And I remember looking up and just seeing this kind of, it was like just like a tunnel of fire above our heads. And there was this almighty explosion. We can't see anything for the smoke. And then this huge thud. And as we looked, as the smoke cleared, the tree where I'd been sat not a minute ago had been blown apart by lightning.
Wow.
And we headed back to the car and we're in tears and, very traumatized. And later that evening, some friends of ours, and I wish I'd got it to show you because it's an amazing picture. I've still got it. I don't know where it is because we moved house a few weeks ago. But we went back that evening with a friend of ours, a very good photographer, and just to see the tree. And I've got a picture of this shattered tree. And some very good friends of our mum and dad were there. And Rosemary, who was a Christian as well, said to mum, why did you move? Because the story, when you hear it, doesn't make any sense. Mm-hmm. And mum just said, I just heard this voice saying move. And I really do believe that was God. And actually, many, many years later, I was at a big Christian event. And this guy just came to pray for me. And he knew nothing about me. I wasn't on Blue Peter at this time. And he just said to me, he said, I've got a really strong feeling that around the age of 7, you had an experience that really demonstrated very powerfully that God is real. So I often look back when I've gone through things that have tested my faith, made me question God's character. I look back to that day and go, that's the day for me when God made himself feel very real.
Excellent. Fantastic story. Now, of course, Blue Peter wouldn't be Blue Peter without the badge. Have you got the badge with you, Simon?
Wait there. I literally okay. Just wait there.
We have to see the badge.
I may have one.
Well done, George.
This is the first time I've ever done this live. I'm sorry, everybody, for disappearing, but this is going to be worth it. Okay, so this is not just a badge.
Yeah, I read about this badge. Yes.
This is the one I was given on the day I left. So there's the box.
Yep.
And inside is one of these.
Wow. Now you got that.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. A gold Blue Peter badge.
Wow. Now you got that presented to you, of course, by Her Majesty herself.
Well, no, I presented the Queen with the badge.
I see.
Badge. Yeah.
What was that like?
Actually, it was funny enough. I was talking about this yesterday with Ethan, my boy. Because he said, what was it like to meet the Queen? And I said, it's a really surreal moment because I'm betting there's probably no one on this Zoom evening who's older than the Queen. So for all of us, I think I can fairly safely say
you haven't met Ellen, obviously.
that she's been an ever present in all of our lives. You know, whether you're a royalist or you're not, she has been there throughout all of our lives. So when she walked into the studio that day, and it's part of her Golden Jubilee celebration, so they were visiting her and the Duke of Edinburgh, various British institutions. I think he'd gone to British Airways that day, and the Queen was coming to visit BBC Television Centre and she was going to see 2 shows. One was BBC News and the other was ours. So we had this long lineup in the studio of past presenters. So Valerie Singleton and Peter Purves were there. Former editors, like the famous editor Biddy Baxter. Lots of people who've been involved both now and before were in the studio. So it was this huge, long lineup. And my boss said, look, we want you, Simon, at the end of the line to be the one who gives the Queen the gold Blue Peter badge, basically because we think you're the one least likely to mess it up. So I said, okay. So about an hour before the Queen arrived, her press secretary came into the studio and we were all lined up. And she came along to each of us and said, what are you going to say to the Queen? And she also told us what you do in terms of, right language and bowing and all those kind of things. And I said, well, I'm going to do a gag. And she said, well, Queen doesn't do gags. And I told her what I was going to say. She said, you cannot say that. I'm going to come back in 5 minutes and I'll let you know what you can, give me something else. Anyway, she came back about 5 minutes later. She said, look, if you stick to those words, you can say the joke. I went, okay. So anyway, so eventually in comes the Queen, and it's like you feel you know her because she's been an ever-present. It's like for a moment you think it's like your grandma's just walked in, and then you go, oh my goodness me, it's the Queen. When she stands in front of you, it is quite a moment. And so I just stood there with a blue box exactly like this. And I just said, Your Majesty, on behalf of the programme, I'd like to award you with the programme's highest honour. It's a gold Blue Peter badge, and Your Majesty may be interested to know you can get into the Tower of London free with this. And the Queen laughed, and off she went. She went, how lovely, and she was gone. And afterwards, I was interviewed by lots of different news channels saying, how did you make the Queen laugh? It's like no one had ever made her laugh before, which of course they have. But yeah, that was an amazing moment. Amazing moment.
Fantastic. What an end to your career, of course, because following the BBC, you jumped across to Sky Sports. Was that a big wrench for you?
No, I mean, yeah, it's a wrench to leave a show like that, but you know when you get the job that your lifespan on it's not a job for life. You know you're going to be on there. Probably most presenters average around 5-6 years. So I knew probably 6 years would be about the time. The thing about the show is it's an amazing show to work on, but it demands an awful lot of your life. You know, you are essentially theirs for those six years. And yeah, there's lots of things socially, life events I missed out on because we would be away filming or something. So that's kind of the only real downside of the job. And I think there comes a time where if you're not careful, you can stay too long and begin to fall out of love with it. And I always wanted to go while I still loved it, to go on a high. And that's a hard way to leave. But I think it's the best way, because then you are just left with happy memories. I mean, I won't say their names, but there have been presenters down the years who have stayed too long. They fell out of love with the programme and became quite bitter about their experiences of it. And it was no one else's fault. It's just they stayed too long. Yeah. And I felt it was just important to go out on a high. So I always said to myself, 5 to 6 years. And then my next ambition was to get into the world of sport.
Now, before we just finish with Blue Peter, one last thing I wanted to ask you about, Peter. Of all the things you've done, like the skydives, the mountain climbing, what was the most exhilarating thing you ever did for Blue Peter?
Very good question. I think the most exhilarating would be the skydiving, because it became a lot harder than I ever envisaged it. I've never had an issue with heights, and I've made it clear to the program quite early on. You know, when the time came to do another parachuting film, because they've done quite a few down the years, I'd love to do it. Mm-hmm. And so we were going to make a film where I would go out to San Diego, because it's where the RAF Falcons do all their winter training, because it's blue skies every day.